Scratchers. I am about to tell you a story, which rocks the boat of fact. A story, that has been removed from local whispers and bedtime stories. A story, which was told to me by a bodiless voice. At the request of the local church, police that was involved in this story and the families of people who had this affect their lives in one way or another. I have removed or replaced details in hopes of protecting their identities. Early this summer, I decided to explore my local surroundings. As with many families in the South, an old hobby and summer activity was to find old cemeteries and look for old tombstones that have had the names and dates washed away due to time and the unavoidable force of nature. After which you would take a piece of parchment paper, graphite pencil, and make a rubbing. Families would use these as currency to barter and trade among themselves. The further away from the cemetery and the older the tombstone, the more value the rubbing would have. This was one of the stranger forms of a barter system that I had encountered in my travels. In my younger years, I found cemeteries to be containers of long-forgotten history, little books that had been tucked away in a sack in the basement, longing to be read. In my older years, the trips turned into a search for my retirement property. Not too far from my house, hidden on top of a place called Purgatory Hill, is a very small graveyard. Much smaller than it was. The smaller cemeteries' outer ends seem to shrink as cities grow. Along the clover leaf or the crook, the old tombstones fill a maze of trees and overgrown storage buildings rotting away. As they feed nature and the world beyond the trees. The hike to this lost place is not for the faint of heart. Along the sides of the road, one would find a host of items. Needles, bottles, old Bibles, and flowers. Somehow the grass is always cut and no one around knows who or how they do it. Time has a way of getting away from you here. In a sad way, it reminds me of how time would fly as us kids gathered around a kitchen table rolling dice and playing Dungeons and Dragons. Even as a child I loved writing and telling stories for open ears. I decided to sit down and rest beside an old faceless tombstone as I took a drink of water from my bottle. I heard a distant, slightly faint voice. One of a man lost among the grayish-white markers that littered the ground. "Hey, friend. Can I call you friend?" The water spewed out of my mouth in shock as I said. "Sure, my bodiless friend. I need to confess my crimes to an open ear, friend." Looking around, in hopes that maybe one of the owners of the needles that peppered the ground, were possibly playing some type of twisted joke on yours truly. I whispered, "Sure, I'm listening." I don't know why I whispered, I don't know why I even stuck around to hear what the voice had to say. I have always wondered the actions of men, even the dumb ones like myself. Normally fear overshadows curiosity, but in this case, curiosity won the roulette spin. Maybe it was a demon, or a ghost, or the devil himself with a deal, and this was his way of walking me down a dark road. Toward the crossroads of chance. A careful adventurer is the dumbest of them all, destined to find that hole that takes them so far down, it's impossible to climb out of. The voice claimed to be an evil man once, one during the 50s who searched the town for sleeping souls. As they drifted off to sleep, he would sneak into their bedrooms, tying their hands and supergluing their eyes open. He would proceed to tell them stories, his thought of the world, until he finally cut open their chest in the search of happiness. See, he thought that happiness was an organ, a tiny gland that was hidden within the body. He wasn't happy and he felt this was a way for him to find what he was missing. Days later, and after a dozen phone calls into the night, I was able to gather more details. He was a doctor by day and a killer at night. This was how he picked his victims and how he would know when they would be asleep. I found that many of his victims also rested in the same place that he did. In a way it was a fitting end to his terror. For a few weeks, I made return trips to the cemetery. I found that many more had stories to tell. and came to the realization that once you're in the hole, you will scratch until someone listens. Stay paranoid, my friends.